I'm playing double duty today. I am the master of ceremonies of these events, and also I'm one of the speakers. So I'm introducing Dr. Ralph May. He's going to make a few comments. I promise to limit my comments to no more than 2 hours. Somebody will do something to me if I talk more than 5 minutes. So you have a safe play. I want to comment on Dr. Gelfand's comments a little bit, that the most important thing we can do is pay attention. We must pay attention to communication. We know that in 15 to 20% of cases that individuals who complete suicide give no indication. Those people, I don't know what we can do to prevent except make ourselves aware that sometimes that can occur. But that means in 80 to 85%, communication occurs. It may be a subtle communication. It may be a complex communication. It may be a deliberate verbal communication saying, I just don't want to live anymore. The most important thing, the most important message is do not ignore that. Do not think, well, I'm not a therapist. I really can't talk to the person. I don't want to put the idea in their head that might kill themselves. That, by the way, is a myth. Asking somebody if they're going to kill themselves does not put the idea in their head. They've already thought about it. We have to, as a society, as a group, refuse to accept that we can step back and let it be somebody else's concern. We may be the only person that hears the communication. We may be the only chance there is to act. We must act. We can prevent suicide deaths. That is critically important. In Indiana County, and we've been tracking these statistics for better than 20 years, there are approximately 10 to 15 people per year in this county that commit suicide, and a portion of those are under the age of 18. We can prevent almost all of those if we pay attention, and if we teach others to pay attention. That is true. The Suicide Task Force is made up of, I'm really honored to be in this group because we have a district attorney. We have everybody who is anybody in Indiana, any social services agency, counseling agencies, drug and alcohol, the hospital. Everybody is involved in this initiative. All 3 county commissioners have come to our meetings, and I'm going to introduce County Commissioner Evanko in a moment to say a few remarks. Everybody's involved in this initiative. We live in a county where people do care. That's the good news. But all of us have to be part of it. That's critical. I'd like to just offer my thanks to Kathy Abby Baker, who's the coordinator of the Suicide Task Force, who's done a tremendous amount of legwork, along with Steve and Cindy, to get this basically activity, this public awareness, this walk in motion. And we can all be thankful to them. Remember, we're all volunteers on this. We do this on our own time. So it's very important that we all give thanks to the people who help, but we should also get involved at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce now Commissioner Patty Evanko. And Patty has been very involved in mental health, drug and alcohol, the social services component of what we do in this county. And she's a significant part of the Suicide Task Force. So I'd like to introduce her and have her say a few comments before we get started with the walk. Commissioner Evanko.
Spaced and everything so I can read it so it's not long. Today is the first ever 5K walk for a wonderful life, and it is the kickoff here in Indiana County for National Suicide Prevention Week. The theme is Walk for a Wonderful Life. Can you all hear this? I hope you all know what this bell represents. The saying goes, when a bell rings, an angel gets his wings. By ringing this bell, to me it symbolizes all of you out there who are angels in disguise. You all have wings, only on earth they are hidden from the human eye. Before I give my remarks, I want to thank the committee for putting all of this together today. I especially want to say it would never have happened without the guidance and selflessness of Steve and Cindy Brown. Sometimes out of real tragedies, angels emerge to bring attention for a cause that might otherwise be overlooked. Steve and Cindy, today we share your sorrow and everyone else out there who lost a friend or a loved one. We only hope that this event will heal your loss in some small way. As I pondered what to speak about today, Cindy suggested I speak about the movie It's a Wonderful Life and how it relates back to suicide suicide prevention. So last week, I pulled out my copy of the movie and watched it again. I never related it to suicide until now. Frank Capra, the producer and director of the movie, probably never realized what a message this would bring all these years later. It is supposed to be a feel-good Christmas movie that everyone brings out at Christmas time. Unless you personally have a close personal tie to a suicide, you wouldn't relate this movie thing to it. Watching this movie and walking the path with George Bailey, played by our hometown son, Jimmy Stewart, I tried to get into his head to understand his thoughts. My first impression of him at the age of 8 was he had no fear. He jumped into a pond of ice-cold water to save the life of his little brother Harry. Because of doing so, he lost the hearing in his left ear. This one action would change his life forever. When the first scene opens, it opens with prayers going up for George. These prayers sent him an angel and saved his life as he came to the end of his rope. He felt he had nowhere to turn. You have to understand, George had a life all figured out. He knew what path he wanted to take. He wanted to travel and see the world and receive a college degree. His father owned a building and loan bank which had one crisis after another. On the night before George was to leave for a trip before going to college, his father had a stroke and died. Since he was the oldest son, he stayed home to run the bank. He wanted to save the people of Bedford Falls from a mean and greedy Mr. Potter, who owned another bank in the same town. George wanted to help his fellow man to buy his own home and not be held hostage paying high rent on a home owned by Mr. Potter. George wanted to keep the bank open and help his fellow man. By doing so, George felt trapped, watching his younger brother Harry and all his friends move on to college. This feeling stayed with him most of his life, even after his marriage. One day there was a crisis at the bank and $8,000 was lost by his Uncle Billy. This crisis was just the last straw that drove him over the edge. He had a life insurance policy which he wanted to use as collateral for a loan for $8,000 from Mr. Potter. Mr. Potter said to him, "You're worth more dead than alive." This little saying pushed George to start thinking of ending his life. Mr. Potter in today's world would be a big bully, not much different than the kids have to deal with every day. George was at his darkest, lowest point without any hope. Sometimes it isn't a big defining moment, but a series of events that triggers this hopelessness, such as George's. George prayed before he was about to jump off the bridge for help, to show him the way, and then he wished he was never born. This is where Clarence the angel steps in to show George what would have happened if he would never have been born. We never know how our lives influences another's. Each man, woman, and child touches so many other lives. When he isn't around, it leaves an awful hole. You may be one person, but you may be the world to someone else. This movie does have a happy ending. George realizes he has a wonderful life. He wants to live again in this movie. In this movie, it is prayers that brings him back by bringing an angel into his life. George realizes he is the richest man in town. I feel what we should take away from this movie is that there is always hope and love out there, even in our darkest moments. Every one of you out there today are angels in disguise. So let me ring this bell so you are all able to have invisible wings and walk for a wonderful life here in Indiana County. Thank you.